What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Collection Commentary. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at something that is so special. I have fallen head over heels for this knife in no time flat. I was lusting after owning a Gavko for about 3 months and just was waiting around for the right opportunity for one. Almost made a move on a couple different ones, and ultimately my patience paid off because I was able to secure something that's, even though it's one of his mid-techs, is still a little bit rare thanks to the color, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let me shut up my phone. Sorry about that. So yeah, this knife is super special, and we're going to get on to all of that, but I first want to talk about the features and flaws. I have to be totally objective here and let you guys know the stuff that I don't like about this knife before I completely gush all over it with my praise that I intend to sing. So I'm going to honestly start this out with the most glaring, awful piece of this knife that I absolutely hate and almost immediately turned me off to the knife. And that is the fact that, just like my Custom Knife Factory Sequoia, the tip of the knife, the tip of the blade, is not completely protected by the end of the handle. It does fall within the length of the handle, but not by much. Let me show you there. But see, not by much. And as soon I'm being poked by the tip just by doing this. And the knife does stick out of your pocket a little bit thanks to the clip. And so if you're not paying attention, your middle finger or your index finger, or really any finger, is going to slide right past that, and it's going right into your finger, and there will be blood. I am super pissed about that. Honestly, there's no way around that. That's just a fatal flaw of the design, and I'm not happy about it. So right off the bat, that was something that immediately made me nervous about the knife, and I wasn't sure about it. But needless to say, I've carried it now, and I've fallen in love, and so I am going to look past that major flaw, because everything else about this knife is pretty much perfect as far as I'm personally concerned. Every knife is different for every person, of course, but let's get into it a little bit more. So the first thing really to note on any Gavko is the finger hole here, and finger hole flipping is so much fun. The action by doing that is so snappy. It's so solid. It feels so good. The positioning of where you hold the knife is sitting exactly where you would want to grip it. If you can kind of actually see here, if I've got my finger lined up here, my index finger is kind of right in line for the index finger cutout here. So as soon as I open it, I just close my hand, which that's really awesome positioning. I like how the hole comes down this far, so that right when you get your middle finger in there, all you got to do is flick, close. Knife's in your hand. Perfect. That is absolute perfect design, and it's really what separates this knife from any other knife in my collection. You know, you can finger flip the Kaiser Kyer for sure, which is kind of like what I refer to. It's like a baby Gavko, even though it's technically bigger than this one. You can, of course, finger flick that, and it feels great. But if I grip, well, my finger got caught on the tab. My hand's not exactly in the right spot. Let's try that again. I have to hold it like this to get proper leverage. Flick, close. Oh, can't do that. So you can see that is what I'm talking about. That is the difference here. I can just flick this, close my hand, and bam, I've got control over the knife. So that's one of the best parts about the knife. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely something that attracts people to Gavko in the first place, and now I see why, and this is one of the most fun knives to fidget with, if not the most fun in my collection. I love to just sit there for an entire hour. If I'm watching TV, trying to wind down after work or something like that, this is the one that I pick up. This is the one that I play with. It's so much fun. Now, the knife does have the flipper tab here, which you can use, obviously. It works pretty well. If we talk about the difference between light switch and and push button, light switching isn't quite going to get deployment if you just drag across the spine. And then push button doesn't feel so great because there's kind of this point. Really, it's kind of intuitive where the flipper tab wants you to put your finger and put pressure. So you can see here, there's this kind of flat area. All you really have to do is put your finger on that flat area and then just push. And then you're going to get excellent deployment every time. So that's nice and intuitive. I like that. So obviously the flipper tab doesn't work in any configuration that you want, but it does make logical sense how to use it. And when you use it correctly, you are going to get really great deployment every single time. Now, he does make some non-flipper tab versions, and looking back on it, you know, I kind of wanted to not have the flipper tab just because it can get kind of like caught on your fingers if you middle finger flick. You can see if I hold pretty tightly. Well, I've gotten so good at it now that it doesn't really happen to me, but when I first got the knife, it was kind of getting stuck on my hand. And it does stick out pretty far, making it not like the best thing for getting down into stuff. And so I had considered getting a non-flipper variant, but I'm glad I have the tab. One, because it is nice to be able to switch up the way you open the knife. It is fun to be able to jump back and forth. And then two is because I think it gives the knife a super mean and aggressive kind of profile, and I think it makes the knife look cooler. So quite frankly, I'm happy to have that. One bummer about it is that it's so big and chunky, it wants to close right on your finger. So you got to get really good about kind of getting it just past the detent and then getting your thumb out of the way, because otherwise you can't close this. Any normal place for your thumb to be is still going to get stuck. You can kind of see that there. So you really have to completely move your thumb out of the way to get the knife to close up, which is okay. Not a huge deal, but definitely something to consider. The next thing I really want to talk about with this knife is, despite how small it is, it feels so freaking sturdy. It feels just like when it's in full lockup, it feels like a solid chunk of metal. It just has a really robust feel to it. It feels way more solid than really any other knife in my collection, honestly. And it is just a titanium structure, but even when I grab like this Wii knife, it feels great, but it's kind of light. It's got some millwork out of the interior, and so they've brought the weight down here. Whereas this knife, even though it's only 8 inches, I actually don't know how much it weighs. It wasn't listed on the website, and I haven't thrown this down on a scale yet. I actually need to get a scale. But there is no internal milling. Kind of hard to see, but just trust me on that one. There is no internal milling, and these are kind of thick slabs of titanium considering the size of the knife. I'm not gonna lie. So there's definitely some meatiness to this, and when I saw how small the knife was, I was kind of like, it's not so great. But it actually is probably the most solid and meaty feeling knives that I have in my whole collection. It just feels so freaking good. And the lack of internal milling there, I think, really helps that. So it just feels like there's a lot of structural rigidity, a lot of structural integrity to the knife. And when it's locked up with the stonewashed look and everything, it just all really comes together. This knife feels so solid and so robust and so powerful. And I really, really like all of that about it. Another thing that I love about this knife is it is balanced on the index finger, which, for those of you who have seen my video on the Alamic 247 and the Wii 604D, you know that that's a big thing for me. Obviously, if I shake the knife a little bit, the weight of the pocket clip does kind of tug on it, but the knife is balanced right here on the the index finger cutout. Some people call that a choil. I don't know if you can really call it a choil if it's not on the blade, but you get what I'm talking about. So it is balanced, and that makes the knife feel really good. I have talked about this before in other videos. Balance on a flipper is a big deal to me. I think it's something that's overlooked on a lot of knives, and I think when it's done correctly and it's balanced on the index finger, I think it makes the whole knife really come together and feel a lot better, and that's a big, big deal for me. So I'm very happy to note that this knife does indeed have proper balancing. Moving on, this blade shape, this is the Persian style blade that Gavko does. I gotta say, it's pretty much my favorite looking blade shape of all time. It's my favorite blade of all time, I'm just gonna say it. Between the finger hole and the functionality of that, the way that it looks, the way that it's cut out to match the handle, The way that you have this really awesome, almost harpoon style. It's a very aggressive styling. I love the fact that it's got this really dark stone wash or acid wash on there. I like the little hole cut out that goes around the flipper tab. I like the shape of the flipper tab. I like that it comes to a really sharp point. The edge is completely wicked sharp. I love the swedge and the hollow grind down here. I like the kind of pseudo Tonto look. I love it. I love it. This is just such a sick blade shape. I know it's not for everybody. I know it's definitely a little bit too murdery for a lot of people to carry. But I got to come right out and say it. It's my favorite blade shape that I've ever had. And that's just, it's personal preference. And I'm not trying to pressure anybody else to feel that way. But for me, I'm telling you right now, this is the blade shape for me. I freaking love this thing. The next thing to talk about for sure is the clip. This is another weak point on the knife. I don't like the fact that the screws, I feel like he could have done like internal hardware on the clip, which would have looked really good, especially because he's got this awesome 3D milling going on. And then even if he hadn't done that, the screw kind of like goes into the bevel, or into this kind of, yeah, it's a bevel. And you can see this screw sits only in the flat area, which looks pretty good. It looks normal, but this screw kind of cuts into the bevel, and I think that just makes it look like the screw placement was an afterthought of the design, which bums me out. I do like the Gavko logo. I do like that it says USA. Again, it is a 3D milled titanium pocket clip, so the tension on it is pretty strong. The pocket clip kind of comes to a point here, and it's very thinned out. So this is actually pretty sharp. This is going to catch a seatbelt. This is going to catch, a bag, a strap, and if you grab it pretty hard, you actually feel it. It's kind of a little too sharp, but it does make a pretty good ramp to get over the pants. There's not a lot of space left with this clip, though. And so thick jeans, you're going to have a problem. And there could have been a lot more done with this clip to make it a little bit better. It has just enough room for a normal pair of pants, but it's just going to kind of sit right there. It's not going to go all the way into the pocket. But with that tension, it is going to hold. Again, though, when you push it into your pocket, you have another opportunity to poke yourself with the tip. So I have to use two hands to get this in my pocket. That's just period. I have to. And so that kind of sucks. I'm not a huge fan of that. If you were going to go one-handed, you kind of want to push here, and then you're going to poke a hole in your thumb. If you... And otherwise, it's not really going to get over the pants because of the tension. So this is definitely a two-handed to get in the pocket, and that's another bummer on a knife of this price point. But again, I can kind of look past that. One other thing to note about the blade here is that there's no jimping, but it does feel really good in that if you're choked up on the knife, you get your thumb to sit kind of right in this harpoon cutout here, and that gives you a lot of solid purchase on the knife. And if you had to push through anything or whatever, you were going to be pretty well served by this. You can see it pretty well matches the exact curvature of my thumb, so that's going to be fine. I kind of like the fact that there's no jimping. I think it matches the knife better, and because I'm still served by the shape of the blade, I'm not too worried about that. The action on this knife is one of the best I've ever tried, that's for sure. Ow. Wow, that's like 3 videos in a row now that I've managed to injure myself. I should probably pay more attention. But the action on this one is so sick. Like I said, the finger flicking is great. If you use the flipper tab the way it's been designed to be used, it's great. This knife completely rockets out to deployment or to lock up every time. Deployment on it's super sweet, and then the blade does drop shut with a light shake, and it's incredibly smooth. I don't know what kind of bearing system he's using, but I know that it's incredibly, incredibly smooth, and I've been super happy with the action on this knife. For those of you who have been watching my videos, you know that action is pretty much one of the top 2, if not the most important thing for me on a knife, and so this one is definitely a total winner in that department for me. It's super sick. Real quick, the blade steel is 154 cm, not something I'm too worried about considering I'm not going to use this knife a crazy amount. And one other thing that I absolutely love about this knife, it does have the steel lock insert, and the disengagement of lockup is, you can't feel it. This, you cannot feel at all. So it makes it a great knife to fidget with and a great knife to disengage. You know, at this price point, that's what I want. I want to not feel it at all. And as I mentioned in my video with the Shirogorov, in my video with the Bodega, I'm experiencing lock stick on knives that are $600, $700, $800, $1,000. And that just really pisses me off. And the Gavko does not have that problem at all. So I really got to hand it to him for having pretty much an absolutely perfect lock disengage. It is perfect every single time. So that's definitely a feature that is important to note. So that's pretty much it for the features and flaws, guys. Now I just want to talk about what makes this knife special to me, a little bit of a story time. For those of you who saw my sneak peek video, you know that I was looking at a green hybrid Mako, and I was getting pretty close to pulling the trigger on it, but I messaged Michael, I don't know how you say his name, it's like Michal. So I don't know if it has like kind of a foreign twinge to it or not, but I messaged him and I asked him if he ever does purple, because obviously purple is a thing that I like in my collection, and he said, you know, it's pretty rare, I don't usually do it because I'm just not a huge fan. And I was like, all right, that kind of sucks. So I contemplated purchasing the green one. I decided to wait a little bit longer to see if maybe something came up in blue again, or just to see what came up on the secondary market. And lo and behold, 3 days later, citing somebody asking him about purple, he offered this knife up on his store. He had made it that day, and I got messaged by 2 people, which was really awesome, telling me that it went up, which was great because I was at work and I wouldn't have seen it. And so within about a few minutes of it going live, I went ahead and purchased the knife. So I was super stoked to be able to get this. I'm very honored to have one that is fairly unique and rare, considering the fact that it is still just his mid-tech version. So, you know, there's a lot of these out there. I don't know about how many. I don't know if it's under 100, over 100. It's probably over 100 by now, but there's definitely going to be very few in purple. So I feel very honored to own such a special piece from him. And I just completely love the design of this knife, and everything about it's perfect. And the way the purple matches the gray stonewash, I think it looks fantastic. I like the bronzing. You can kind of see here on the texturing of the knife. Everything about it is super fantastic. And so I guess it's worth closing out this video on the fact that I think this is my new favorite knife. I think this knife might actually be beating out the legendary WE 604D that has been my favorite knife up until now. I think the WE still has a little bit more sentimental value to me so far, just because of the duration that I've had it and the impact that it's had on my knife owning career. And it's a really close call. I'm really not sure, guys, but I will say it's fair to gamble that the Gavko is quickly making its way to the top of my list. So thanks so much for watching, guys. If you want to see other videos that I make of amazing knives, please subscribe. If you liked this video, please hit that like button. It definitely helps. Check me out on Instagram at tovarishworks to see some sweet photos of all the knives that you see here and more. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time.